comments and come up, and we'll just talk about anything you want to talk about.
Yeah, so I think it's important to just really quickly create a baseline for tonight's conversation. Because sometimes, depending on where you grew up, so I'm a 7th generation Texan. My family has a couple hundred acres out in the hill country, cattle on the land. The majority of my life, I grew up here in the greater Houston area, right? So I'm not a rancher. But whenever you say the word brand, a lot of people think, oh, like brand, like branding cattle, right? But what is a brand? And I just want to throw this out there. Does anybody in here, when I use the word brand when it comes to businesses, does anybody know what we're talking about?
Yes, because I used to be in web design before I switched tracks because of an accident. But yeah.
Glad you're all right. So what would you say is a brand?
A brand is where you create like a logo and you make the logo where it seems like it's descriptive of what you're trying to sell.
Yeah, exactly. So like here at Citizens Grill, for example. Here at Citizens Grill, there's a very distinct brand. You see the logo, you immediately, the restaurant comes to mind. And if you've been here and you look at the aesthetic, it matches the logo, it matches the brand. There's a feeling that we all get whenever we come here. When you look at Montgomery County Tea Party, there is a brand that Montgomery County Tea Party has. But let me ask you, what would you define a brand to be?
In the simplest form of branding is just perception management. So how do you view something, right? I like to say it's the emotional connect, or really the perceived value and emotional connection you have with a person, place, or thing. So anyone can have a brand, anything can have a brand. Kind of the topic that we was talking about today, our country has a brand. And when you boil branding down, it's like what we do with businesses is if it's a personal brand or a business brand, we say, hey, what's the one word that best defines you, that you can capture your essence? Finding that story and nailing it down. What are your adjectives? How do you describe yourself? What's your tagline? You know, what is the promise you make in your customer's life? You know, our country had that. And when I was looking at it, the cool thing is it's in everybody's pocket right now. It's your coin, right? Well, before they put the called dead presidents on the money, we had Lady Liberty. So our one brand word is on the coin Liberty. And that's what is our fundamental promise. And then we have in God we trust is our tagline. But a lot of people don't know that Ben Franklin actually proposed our first tagline. It didn't get accepted. And it was rebellion to tyrants is obedience to God. Because they just came out of the revolution. So we wish it would have got picked, but that's kind of our DNA as a country. And
yeah, no, and you actually went right into what I wanted to go into next, which is what has the brand of America been? So I think about, and I don't know how to pronounce the name. It's a Frenchman. He coined the term American exceptionalism. And a lot of people don't really understand what that means. And so that term American exceptionalism had to do with the fact that in France, where this gentleman was from, the government gave you your rights. So then he comes over here and he learns that no, government doesn't give us our rights. Those rights are unalienable and come from God. And he goes, are you serious? I mean, obviously he said it in French. I'm not French. Are you serious? That's exceptional. That is exceptional. That is where the term American exceptional, that means we are the exception, we are not the rule. So you have you have this whole movement right now, and it's a big identity crisis is what it is. There is, the brand of America has been attacked to move away from God.
Yes. Yes.
And the whole reason why is, can anybody guess it? Because if you remove God out of government, then who becomes God? Government. And if government then gives you your rights, they can take them away. So it's funny whenever I'm gently having conversations on Facebook with people about this whole separation of church and state argument. Because the reality is it is the Christian belief from Joshua when he says, choose this day whom you will serve. As for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. We have a choice because God's a gentleman. So it's the fact that we're a Christian nation, founded on Judeo-Christian values, that gives us the right to choose whether to serve him or not. So that has historically, up to a point, been America's brand, but it's now under attack. And so it's who's under attack by the oligarchy. And so we use the term oligarchy, and it kind of sounds like malarkey, and it basically is malarkey, but what is an oligarchy?
Well, to touch on what you were just saying, what we do for a living is normally people hire us when they have an identity crisis or an identity issue.
Oh, yeah.
Or they're just starting something. So I like to say, what is America? We hear this democracy all the time, but really, we all know this, we're a republic. Well, what was that? Right? So we moved from a republic to a democracy to an oligarchy where we're run by a small group of elites that pretty much, hold all the power kind of thing. So I put down here this quote that I liked. The greatest problem we have in the United States right now is not ignorance. It's believing things and concepts that are not true. And that's what really they're trying to, we're talking about the oligarchy, changing our definition, is that we're no longer a republic, but we're really an oligarchy. And you're seeing that every day in society.
Yeah, it's crazy as you're talking about this whole idea of an oligarchy that, I mentioned just a few minutes ago that he's also a small business owner, does what I do. So I don't remember how long ago it was, but she started something called the American Serf Shop. And serf is S-E-R-F. And does anybody in here know what a serf is? Not surf like in the ocean, but surf, S-E-R-F.
It's a laborer tied to your land.
Yep.
That's right. That's right. We look at it as somebody, when I was studying it's not a slave, because the slave gave up their bought soul, but a serf gave up their freedom for protection, kind of thing. And so it really started when, which is something I'm going to talk about in a second, but the way the American Serf Shop thing started was, you remember when the World Economic Forum came out and said, you're going to own nothing and you're happy? Immediately I was like, that's
Agenda 2030.
Yeah, it was actually on my birthday, June 3rd, 2020. And I was like, that is a serf. Is like you own nothing and you're going to be happy. And actually, I'll let you do that because I wanted to.
Well, let me ask you. So, how many of you in here have ever been told by somebody that you know, whether it's a friend, family member, relative, whatever, family member, relative, same thing. How many of you ever been told, well, that whole thing with the World Economic Forum, that's just a big conspiracy theory? Anybody been told that? So you and I, we were headed to CPAC back in August, and we were talking about the World Economic Forum, and you had said some things about conspiracy theory, and
I'm not a conspiracy theorist. Don't put that on me.
no, that wasn't that one.
No. So this is just some thoughts I like to throw out that we can talk about. So in the Declaration of Independence, you always hear, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, unalienable rights. The rebranding part that I've been thinking about is, if somebody tried to take our life, we'd fight against it. If somebody tried to take our property, we'd fight. If somebody tried to take our liberty, we'd fight. But no one ever focuses, this word came to me, no one ever focuses on the word pursuit. And I thought, that's what they're doing. They're working on taking away your desire to pursue life, a job. We'll pay you to do this. We'll go on welfare, do this, the whole, you're going to own nothing and be happy. It's easier to rent. You don't need to pursue that. And so I'm like, that's the focus word, is that the oligarchy takes away your desire to do it yourself. Remember Obama, you didn't build that. Your kids don't, this came out the other day, your kids don't belong to you, they belong to everybody else. It don't matter what you do. And you're just like, it's literally, and C.S. Lewis has this, one of my favorite quotes, it's called, "We make men without chess, and we expect of them virtue and enterprise. We laugh and honor, but we're shocked to find traitors in our midst who castrate and bid the building be fruitful." So we literally are making men in this generation without chess. Actually, it's kind of funny, we're making men who now they're putting boots on and the women are cutting theirs off.
And I just want to interject here real quick, because it's not a conspiracy. And so when you put out a PowerPoint, right, it's not a conspiracy. Whenever you're on video talking about these things, it is not a conspiracy. As a matter of fact, I was digging in a little bit last night because I've always wondered, what does it take to be named a young global leader with the World Economic Forum? I've always had a question of, is this something that you have to apply for? Are you nominated by somebody that you know, or do they just randomly choose you?
Yeah.
So I went to the World Economic Forum's website, and it's kind of a culmination of all of the above. And that was very shocking, very, very shocking to me. Oh, I'll take one. Thanks. And what's happening, y'all? Thank you so much. What's happening is they've infiltrated every level of American culture. Anybody in here ever seen the Avengers? Age of Ultron? So those of you that have seen it, whenever I say the word Hydra, then you know what I'm referring to. And basically, Hydra was an organization that lived for decades, since World War II, since before World War II, started infiltrating cultures, started infiltrating societies, working their way into corporations, government. And in Age of Ultron, their plan comes into fruition and they oust themselves and almost take over everything if it wasn't for our heroes, the Avengers. I just want to throw this out there. We need to become Avengers. Every single person in this room tonight needs to become Avengers. But there's something called the 7 mountains of cultural engagement. Okay, and I'm going to name these off just really quick. Family, religion, education, media, entertainment, business, and government. All 7 mountains have been infiltrated by the World Economic Forum and Marxism. You look like you were chomping to say something.
No, I was actually thinking of something, but I don't know if it fits in.
Well, come on with it.
Jameson.
The 7 mountains is something that I learned about in Biblical Citizenship for Modern America, which comes from David Barton and Patriot Academy. And I'm actually a constitutional coach with the Patriot Academy. I've been through that class 4 times. Can you list them again? Yes, it is family, religion, education, media, entertainment. I'll slow down for a second. Business and government. So basically, those are the 7 mountains that touch each and every one of our lives in some way, shape, form, or fashion.
I think at the root of those is what's being rebranded in America. Does anybody know who Samuel Rutherford is? Heard the term Lex Rex? So our entire system of government is founded on that. Samuel Rutherford was, Lex Rex meaning law is above the king. And so Witherspoon and some of our founding fathers picked that up, and then of course some of John Locke and stuff like that. But that is the whole, Samuel Rutherford said that under an absolute monarchy, so the king pretty much wanted to whack his head off. Anybody who had the book Lex Rex during that time was a traitor and would be ordered to put in your house. I keep a copy right by my desk all the time to remind me of that. And so that's the fundamental thing, everything he just read, is we're trying to rebrand him from the law is king to the king is the law. And that's been the struggle. That's what makes America so incredible, is we're the first country that said, no, we're going to be led by, our citizens, and we don't want this arbitrary absolutes, is what we've had for, millennia. Therefore, the king says it's wrong, it's wrong. If I say this, it's that. Well, that's what changed. And so,
yeah, I mean, so everything that you just said reminds me of what life was like back in 1776. So if you ever want to get into the heads and the headspace of our founding fathers, you can't just read the Constitution. You have to also read the Declaration of Independence. And then also the Federalist Papers, the Anti-Federalist Papers. And Wall Builders is a great place to do that, by the way. And also joining a Patriot Academy class, whether it's constitutional law, biblical citizenship in modern America. Great place to start. It's a quick start guide. But with that being said, here's what's different. What was different about America is that where the founders come from Europe, that model of government was that God was still supreme, but God gave power directly to the king, and the king would give power to the people as the king saw fit. What we did in America in our model of government is that we reversed the last two, so that God gives power to the people, and the people give power to the government as the people see fit. And this agenda to basically reverse it back. So this is something that I literally just learned about in the last 24 hours, called the Cloward-Piven Strategy. And I just want to read this really quick. Does anybody know what that was? The clown? Okay. I feel really dumb because now you all do it and I didn't. Okay. Like, hey, you're the speaker, you're supposed to know all this stuff. Okay, so the Cloward-Piven Strategy was a political tactic developed in the 1960s by sociologists Richard Cloward and Francis Fox Piven. Their idea was to overload the U.S. welfare system by encouraging a surge in enrollments, tending to create an economic crisis. They believed this crisis would cause a collapse of the capitalist system, paving the way for the introduction of a socialist system with a guaranteed annual income for all. Anybody see any problems with that?
Many.
So, literally, it's reversing the last two. Where now government reigns supreme, government becomes king, and we become serfs all over again. That's what socialism is. Yeah.
Question.
Yes.
You've introduced some of the philosophy of critical value. Can you give everybody here a definition of natural law versus man's law?
Yeah, so natural law would be like gravity, right? So the law of gravity is a natural law. There's no way for us to change it.
No.
Or
Natural law is God's law.
Right. Right to self-defense, right to bear arms.
Yes.
well, so there's the laws of nature and nature's God, right? So that's actually one of the big differences between libertarianism and conservatism. Is that libertarianism just stops at the laws of nature, but they don't take it one step further the way conservatives do. We actually don't just look at the laws of nature, but we also look at nature's God. For example, rape in nature is normal. There are other animals that actually force themselves on other animals. There's also, eating your young is normal in nature. But thank God we don't do that. We don't eat our young. We have laws against that. Why? Because we don't just stop at the laws of nature. We take it one step further, nature's God, which means that we have a moral standard. So we're not just governed by the laws of nature. So I don't know if that answers your question. That's the way that.
It's a statement, and I've gone through biblical citizenship, and basically what that is about is God's law is supreme.
was looking at the Declaration where it says the laws of nature and nature's God, and that's where I was getting this from.
Well, that's been the struggle is, Lex Rex thing, the law of God is above the king. And most people, that's the fight that they try to go over. I was going to mention something.
I don't know.
Your statement.
No, I was just saying, that's just where I was getting that from, the laws of nature and nature's God. Yeah, there's actually 4 different types of law, and I won't get into that here. You get into it in the Patriot Academy. But it was definitely a great question. I guess I misunderstood exactly what you were saying, but I was actually pulling that from the Declaration where it mentions the laws of nature and nature's God.
Yeah. Well, one of the things we're looking at is what are they actually trying to rebrand us to be? And we were talking the other night, it's one word, it's apathetic.
Yep.
Apathy. And that's what in the 70s, or I'm sorry, the 60s, where the drug culture, and they tried that, and they went around, and they didn't believe their parents, and they came back around to, now they're apathetic, and then they, it's just cyclical when it does stuff like that. So I started looking at, I read something where it talked about that a freedom movement happens every 250 years. And I was like, what? I don't remember where I read that. So I got this big book, I forgot what it's called, but it literally is like 20 foot. And you can pull it out, and it shows you all over the world, and it dates back to the beginning. It's like this guy's life work. So I just had this idea, I was like, I'm gonna go 250 years back from 1776. So you started, and I can't remember, don't quote me on all this, but I looked at it, and it was something like Columbus, finding America, and then it went back to another major thing, and then it went back to like Braveheart. I was looking in England, what happened? Scott. And so I'm looking at this, and it goes all the way back, literally to around the cross. And I'm like, that's crazy. And then I stopped, and I'm like, wait a second, what is 250 years from 1776? Do you know what date that is? 2026. So I started looking, we have this short window from 2026, when did the World Economic Forum say we're taking over? 2030. 2030, it's done. So that's their deadline when the rebranding is done. And it freaked me out because I've never seen this before. I thought, wow, if we have this window between there to 2030, and they're trying to take away the pursuit, people want to stand up for ourselves or defend our life, liberty, and all that stuff. You're seeing it more in modern culture and with the branding, with the rebranding of America, rebranding people. We're seeing that right now. There's this thing I saw the other day, and it said, it was a shirt, and it says there are multiple genders, and in the Lord it said sizes, men or women. And I was like, well, that doesn't make a lot of sense. So, but they're trying to rebrand everything. So I saw that as that short window to where we really can do something. Yes.
In regards to branding conversations and other aspects, you need to think about, from a business perspective, think about banking, think about where the money got polluted, because back in World War II, there was people that lived in the same family who brought from, they lived in different countries, and they depended on that. They do work in shapes. Major things. How did education ever come about? And if you are wanting to really dig into it, you need to look at how that historically came to be from the office of the President of the United States. How did the financial aspect have control of money? Because if you control money, and then there's this silly movement with this electronic commerce. I was in a place that they did not accept cash. They only wanted to sell something with credit cards. So it's totally changing the prospect and opinion of money, what money represents, who owns the money, and what's going on. So you have to look at the fiduciary element of this mindset.
So it's everything.
That goes back. Not
Yeah.
to the 50s or the 60s. Go to the 30s.
Yeah.
Beyond that.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like I said, there's nothing's off the table when they're rebranding this stuff, right? I mean, like the other thing in the PowerPoint says you're going to eat less meat. And then all of a sudden you see a marketing campaign to eat bugs and, you know, these people to do this. And then you see, which is really gross, but cannibalism. You know, Gordon Ramsay did a thing on that, and you're seeing there's 3 books out that talk about cannabis. So they're desensitizing you. I'm a member of the Holocaust Museum just for their library, because they have the most incredible books, and I look at all their graphic design books, how the propaganda would work. I'm reading how they, you know, how did you take a group of people who was your neighbor, and within a few months now kill them? What psychologically had to happen? So what we did it with masks. You know, you get mask shame, you don't take the, it's like we're doing it. So that's the apathy that we have to shake, and it's like one guy said, I thought I would have stood up to Hitler, but when they says, if you don't get the shot, you can't go into the bar, and he's like, well, I can't really quit on that one. It's just like, so there's Anne Frank right there, you know, and so we have a short window to stop our apathy, but what do we do? And the thing we talked about, was you can't save the whole country. It's like the book of Nehemiah. We have to rebuild the wall, get the rubble. You're only responsible for your gate. Is that Montgomery County? Is that Kingwood? Is that, what can I do? And then we were talking about this last night, this question when Jameson asked me. I said, here's what you should ask people. If somebody comes up to you and says, what are you going to do to fix that? Then his question, I said, they need to say, what are you prepared to do to help me fix it?
Yes.
Or you get that aspect of, if I come up to you, what do you need me to help you do to fix this? Because we're all responsible. And this is the way it happens in church. Oh, the pastor, he's the one that leads people. You know, it's that line between government and, you know, citizens is the same with the laity and the clergy. That line should not exist. The pastor actually hinders us from doing, you know, I don't want to get to that whole thing, but that's the way our citizens. We just expect this guy to do everything. We hired you to go out here, you're the professional. That's not the way a republic works. It's not the way a democracy works.
You're talking about the pastor, and the Christians are the church.
It's
Church
like,
is the pastor. So it's like you're all together. The pastor has a similar role.
yeah.
But the body of the church is to know, to be the salt and the light.
Yeah.
So you have to accomplish that, because remember, we got nature law here, law here. It's not as you believe in Christ, you are supposed to be helping keep that
Yeah.
natural law current and active.
Well, the basic overall point was, don't be apathetic. Let's do something. Did you have a question? I'm sorry, you had first.
The first thing we need to do is the root cause, and the root cause is the voting integrity. I still don't believe that we got that straightened out.
Amen.
So in 2024,
Yeah. And that's where the apathy comes in. Why should I vote?
Yeah, I was going to say,
I
this is
think
something.
everybody voted, but our integrity of the voting system is off.
So this is something that I deal with all the time, because I talk a lot about personal responsibility. And the majority of my supporters are Trump supporters. And then, you know, I've got some on there that are DeSantis supporters. But the Trump supporters, they're like, I'm not gonna vote again until they fix 2020. And I'm like, well, then they're gonna win. Because our actions are either gonna make it harder or easier for them to cheat. In Harris County, 2022, you guys heard about what happened in the Republican precincts out in Harris County? They ran out of paper. If enough Republicans hadn't shown up to vote, would we have exposed that plan? No. It's because there were enough Republicans that showed up in those precincts to vote that we were able to expose that plan. They will not be able to do that.
Yeah.
Did you have a question?
I was just gonna make a comment here. I was one of the assistant judge at that precinct where we came on the youth, and they were trying to shortchange us. But God is so merciful that I wasn't praying, and I only slept like 2 hours at night. And that was the first time I got into the position of an assistant judge, and didn't know why I only had 2 hours of sleep. And I prayed all night long, didn't know what I was in for. But that, at the end of the night, at 1:30 in the morning, that we got there at 5:30 and left at 1:30 in the morning. That lady said to me, I don't know how you ran this system, allowed them to come in. They didn't start voting till 11:30 in the morning. And I said it was only by the grace of God, because I didn't even know what I was doing, but I had worked before, early voting, and watched everything that they did as a clerk. And then I was put in an assistant judge position. And the truth is coming out because Wendell just, interviewed me and did a private investigation and all that. And so all the truth is coming forward. And my point is this: they don't want us to vote because it was so difficult for people to vote in sheets and pages, and you can't vote all straight Democrat or all straight Republican. You can't do that anymore. But they want you not to vote and make it difficult for you so that way we'll give up. And don't, because God was behind the scene that day that I only had 2 hours sleep. But I tell you, I didn't even know how I ran that next day till 1:30 in the morning. But I realized, wow, this is what my warfare prayer all night was about. Was getting that precinct open where it needed to be for them to vote.
Well, I have experienced that. I went to vote all Republicans. That's when you vote one time, all right? And when I got to the end, it switched to Democrat. So that stuff is
I want
happening.
to make sure, I just want to make sure, because we got Mike, and then we have this gentleman over here, and we got about 15 minutes or so. We'll try to get wrapped up. Mike?
Real quick, so Jameson said we need to be avengers. You might wonder what that means. It means do something. Talk to a neighbor. Get someone to a polling place. I befriended Jameson to learn about him. I'm helping with his campaign. And talking about being an election judge, I came from Cook County, Illinois, probably the most corrupt county. Yeah, I'm a refugee. We made it. I was a Republican election judge in Cook County, and one thing I can guarantee you is the precinct that I worked in, we were an accurate and honest precinct. That's just one in a lot, but that's all. One person can make a difference.
Yeah.
Become an election judge. It's not that hard. Do something, and that's what being an avenger is.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just want to say something really quick, and I'll come over to you, sir. So, you guys remember in the 70s and 80s, okay, South Korea, huge revival. South Korea went from being 2% Christian to then being over 33% in one generation. I mean, just massive revival. Can anybody guess what it actually is today in 2024? Only 1.7% Christian in South Korea. So, why? Because despite their revival, they couldn't figure out how to pass the gospel on to the next generation. And what was it that Reagan said? That freedom is never more than how many generations? One generation away from extinction. If we don't figure out how to pass the torch of liberty onto the next generation, which branding has a lot to do with it. If you go to the store and you've got 2 bottles of water, one just has a white package on it, a white label that just says water written in marker, and then the other one looks good, it's professionally done. Which bottle of water are you going to choose if those are your only 2 choices? The one that looks good, the one that's professionally done. It's going to be very difficult to trust the label that's just a piece of paper taped to it with marker or with water written in marker. Packaging is everything. Branding is everything. Okay? Yes, sir.
When Harris County failed to provide ballots for 23 precincts, why didn't the state of Texas shut the election down, postpone it, take it over, and try and play it?
It's a great question.
I think it's one of those things. You guys remember the, I think it was the 70s, Billy Jack?
Yeah.
Remember Billy Jack? Remember that, I forgot what movie it is, but we talk about this a lot with Democrats and Republicans, because you're seeing it right now. Republicans always, you know, they'll complain or they'll say, but they never get anything done. It seems like.
Rhinocrats.
Yeah. So there's a scene in Billy Jack where he's surrounded by these people, which made me think, you know, Republicans, they get their surround. And Billy Jack comes up to him and goes, I'm going to tell you exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to take my left foot and I'm going to put it across the right part of your face. There's not a damn thing you can do about it. And the guy laughs and goes, good. He goes, good. And he does it. And he's got all these people surrounding him. I thought, that is such a representation of what we Democrats do to Republicans. It's like, you want to do? I'm going to put you in jail, and I'm going to do the same thing you've done. And there's not a damn thing you can do about it.
Yep.
What are you going to do? And they're laughing. And that's where the apathy you have to get, you know, that apathy, and it's so discouraging because there's, I know we're almost done. This quote I wanted to leave you with, it says, by Montesquieu, said the tyranny of a prince and an oligarchy is not so dangerous to the public welfare as the apathy of a citizen in a democracy. And I thought, that's what it's all about. We have to shake our apathy. We have a small window to do it, right? 2030, if that's their thing, they're not playing around with that at all. And so what do we have to do is each person, like in Nehemiah, we take our group, our tribe, and say, what can we do to rebuild this section of the wall, this section of the gate? When everybody does that, it's great, but not to get overwhelmed to think, how do I fix the entire country? Because that apathy will set in, you don't know what to do.
Yeah, I mean, and I can speak from experience, just being a candidate at the federal level, there comes an expectation that I have an answer for everything, and that I have it all figured out at every level of government, from federal to state, all the way down to school board. And the reality is that it's difficult whenever you also have to live a life, put food on the table. It's difficult to pay attention to everything. So, you know, I've chosen to focus the majority of my efforts on where we're at spiritually as a nation, the Constitution, as well as what's going on at the federal level. But, you know, if you've ever felt dumb because you know a lot about what's going on at the state level, but then don't really know what's going on at the federal level, or maybe, you know, we have a lot of local activists here. And very well aware of what's going on here in Montgomery County. And that consumes the majority of your time to the point where sometimes you'll go 3, 4, 5 weeks without knowing what's going on in Austin, what's going on in Washington, because it's a lot of work, isn't it, Wendy?
Yes, it is.
So don't allow anyone to make you feel dumb because you don't have all the answers. And it's like Ron was saying, focus on your sphere. And don't let anybody try to distract you from that. Because chances are, God has you there for a very specific reason, for such a time as this.
Yeah, and all it takes is you just to raise your hand. Now that's the thing that we're learning. I'm working with a group where we're exposing sex trafficking organization in churches and a college ministry who's been embedded for 30 years in this group. I mean, you know, you've got a lot of shepherds who are, if you can't tell the difference, it's like, something wrong. And you don't have the goods to do it. But all I did was, I'm like, I want to do this stuff. And God's like, just raise your hand. And he loves using those people. And that's the beauty of America. Like Taco Bell said, when he came over here and he saw the work ethic of every American, he was like, man, there's not a lazy person in this country at all. It just freaked them out. It's like, this is incredible. You know, that was their brain. But that's where they target the pursuit of heart to change that. Because if they go after your life or liberty, you're going to find them. But if they change your desire to want those things, then...
Core was the ownership of land.
All right, Mark, I see your hand up, and then we're going to go ahead and wrap up. I want to make sure, and Wendy, so let me get Martin first and Wendy, and then I want to give you guys some action steps. So I never like to just get up here and fire hose and blast everybody, but then have y'all leave and be like, well, that was really cool, but what do we do now? So we do have some action steps, some next steps that each and every person here can take. Again, find out where is your sphere, right? Where is that little gate, right? That little part of the wall that you, with your life, can make the greatest impact. So really quick, Martin, my brother from another mother.
Staying engaged and keeping us engaged and informed. And beyond that, going back to biblical citizenship, I think the reason why we are where we are is because as a biblical citizen, everything I do ought to reflect God. When I come to this meeting, I'm coming to this meeting because I want to bless God. When I'm going to vote, I'm going to vote because I want to do my job to bless God. But even as Christians, we've forgotten that. We think going to vote is one thing, and coming to a meeting is another thing, and going to God is another thing. But if we bring it all us, this is our responsibility to God. Because the scripture says, do it as unto God. So everything we do, and if we get that and go back to that, saying, when I go to vote, I'm going to do this because I want to bless God. When I go out to hang out with a friend, I'm going to do that. When I go work for Jameson, I'm going to do that because I'm going to bless God. Then and only then can we change America. Otherwise, we'll do whatever we want to do. It's going to come to naught. Thank you.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Yeah, give him a hand. And here's the thing is that where each of us are at in life, we're all at different levels, whether it's in our walk with God. Maybe there's some of you here that haven't made that decision to make Jesus not just your Savior, but the Lord of your life. And that's okay. You know, one of the things that we have to learn is we have to learn where is our mission field, right? Because it does no good to plant seeds in a field that's already ripe for harvest, right? So we've got to find our mission field, and that can look different for each and every one of us. And all we can do is the absolute best that we can do with where we're at, and then we have to leave the rest up to God. But we cannot allow ourselves to get to a place where we've got a shovel in our hand because God has empowered us. He's given us His Holy Spirit. We have the authority. In fact, Jesus said that all authority on heaven has been given unto me. Therefore, go. Make disciples of all the nations. We've been given a great commission. And we no longer are part of this world. We are citizens of the kingdom of God. There is a huge identity crisis going on right now that is being reflected in what's going on. If you don't believe me, just look at the sexualization of our kids, the LGBTQ movement. It's an identity crisis. Back in the 60s, it was the hippies. They were searching after something. There was an identity crisis. Here in America, even amongst Republicans, there's an identity crisis because we have people that are presenting themselves as something that they're not. They say one thing with their words, but then they vote very differently in Congress at every level.
Yeah.
And what Martin is speaking to is he's saying, look, be real. If you're going to call yourself a Christian, be like Christ as much as you can with where you're at, and whenever you are corrected, be humble about it. Walk in humility. And that's really what he's referring to there. And unfortunately, we have a lot of people, they say they're Christians, but then they go to the ballot box and they vote for things that break God's heart.
That's right.
Every single day.
That's right.
Will you say the quote, the tyranny quote?
Oh, yeah, he had said a little bit earlier, but rebellion to tyranny is obedience to God.
Rebellion to tyrants is obedience to God. The crazy thing is did you know Thomas Jefferson loved that so much that he put it as his own personal brand?
Oh, I love that.
And so the state of Virginia still has it on their seal.
Oh, my.
It says sic semper tyrannis, thus always the tyrants. And it's liberty standing on top of a tyrant with a whip and it's all.
We need to
So
brand
that's-
ourselves. Everything that we do needs
Yeah.
that quote on it. I love that.
Yeah, Ben Franklin is probably got, I know
Yeah, no, we've got about 8 minutes. So here's the thing.
In the Bible, that now lack of knowledge destroyed my people or something like that.
Yeah, my people are destroyed with the lack of knowledge.
A major problem with online propaganda media.
Yep.
No
Yep.
one is, we can't even wait for a lie.
Yep.
It's very
They
difficult.
don't even bother to report on things they need to. That's another lie by omission.
And that's another reason why I believe that reliance on the Holy Spirit for a lot of that, because God said, if you want wisdom, pray and I'll give you wisdom. He'll give us discernment. And so there are times whenever we can lean not on our own understanding, but in all our ways acknowledge Him, and He promises He will make our path straight. And I don't mean to over-spiritualize it. That's the Bible, that's the Word. And so it is difficult from a practical standpoint. It's very hard, very hard. So I want to leave you guys with 3 practical steps that you can begin to implement tonight. You guys are night owls like I am, or in the morning for those of you that are early birds. First and foremost, this can be done tonight. And some of y'all have heard before. And the reason why I'm very consistent, because this is my heart. I'm constantly trying to learn. And if I'm wrong, I try to make sure that I admit that I'm wrong and then try to learn from my mistakes whenever I make them. So whenever I say what I'm about to say, somebody will be like, roll your eyes, I've heard this before. My question is, why are you rolling your eyes? It probably has nothing to do with me. It probably has everything to do with the fact that y'all are hearing it and not doing anything about it. So first step, didn't mean to step on toes, but I kind of did. First step,
you have 2 minutes.
resolve to prioritize liberty over leisure. Resolve to prioritize liberty over leisure. I've said this before. The Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo takes about 32,000 volunteers, does it not, Paige? 32,000, and people flock from all over for a dadgum rodeo that really doesn't mean a hill of beans in the big scheme of things. But in 2020, in the greater Houston area, we had less than 1,500 people volunteer for the Trump campaign. We got a priority problem. We can make excuses or we can make history. We can't make both. We've got to be willing to sacrifice a little bit of sacrifice that wine tasting going on the first and third Monday of each month to come here to the Montgomery County Tea Party meeting.
Or you could do both.
Or you can do both.
That's what I was just saying. You can do both. Right, exactly. Let's do it here.
Oh, good Lord. At the end of the day, y'all, it's about serving.
Yes.
And in John 15:13, greater love has no one than this, that He laid down His life for His friends. I think about Benjamin Rush, who's known as the founding father of the public schools under the Constitution. And he taught that our public schools constitutionally exist to do 3 things: to love and serve God, to love and serve our country, and to love and serve our families. In that order: God, country, family. He put country before family because he knew that if we ever lost control of our country, it would become the great enemy of our families. And as Christians, as conservatives, we tend to flip the last 2. Like, well, no, it's God first, then my family. How are we supposed to trust? Are any first responders in here, or family of first responders? Any veterans? Thank you all for your service. How are we supposed to trust that these guys go do their job selflessly if they're more concerned about getting home to their families than they are about doing their jobs? God, country, family. Also, last thing I'll say to this point, putting family before country teaches us to focus inward instead of living outward. I hold a firm belief. Now, this is somebody being guilty of this myself, of living paycheck to paycheck, robbing Peter to pay Paul, having to work around 3 months' budget just to try to put tires on the car. I know what that's like. But I've also resolved within myself that that's a very selfish place to be. Being broke is selfish. Why? Because I spend so much time and energy trying to figure out how to solve my problems that I've got nothing left for anybody else. We've got to get back to serving and duty, God, country, family. Second thing, serve and get involved. That kind of ties right in with it. Well, where can you serve? Well, for one thing, we're always looking for members here at the Montgomery County Tea Party.
Amen.
Montgomery County Freedom Caucus is always looking for people
Absolutely.
to come out, work the polls, block wall.
Yep.
We're always looking for good candidates. But that's not all. You can go through a Patriot Academy class. Go through the class, become a constitutional coach. You don't have to be an expert. You just have to be willing to raise your hand. Everybody can do something. School board meetings. You know, Steve Toth over there has been working hard to protect our kids in our schools. Speaking of kids, mentor a teenager.
Yes, yes.
I can't tell you how thankful I am that in my church that there was a gentleman, both my pastor and someone on staff was willing to mentor me, take me under and teach me what a man was. Because my dad, being a firefighter, sometimes was too busy.
You can show up at the Board of Education meetings
Yes,
and support these teachers.
absolutely. Because there are good teachers. I feel like there's people that paint teachers with a broad brushstroke the same way the left paints law enforcement. Just because you are a teacher at Conroe ISD does not mean you are an evil person and you're part of the corrupt system. We need good teachers.
Yes.
Educate yourself and vote. That's a big one. Educate yourself and vote. Tea Party, Freedom Caucus, Patriot Academy with Rick Green and David Barton, Convention of States, Citizens Defending Freedom. Look these organizations up and get involved. And then number 3, inspire and teach others to do the same. That's what discipleship is all about. It's about growing others up. It's about taking what you know and depositing it into somebody else. And then teaching them to then deposit it into somebody else.
Yes.
And remember, you can't plant seeds in a field that's already ripe for harvest. You know somebody that needs to be here tonight and they are not here. There's some fertile ground for you. Let's start there.
Yep.
You want to say something?
I was just thinking your thing to leave you guys, informing the mind in a way that inflames the heart, that engages the will. I think this is what we teach in our business, informing the mind on all this stuff, and then inflames the heart, the stories, that kind of stuff. And then those things have to engage the will, and that's kind of the cycle that just goes right around. Thank you for,
Yeah.
I hate to eat, by the way, that's why I like it.
Well, thank you for your sacrifice. Appreciate your
I'm trying to make
sacrifice.
it selfish.
Again, just a quick review of these 3 things. Resolve to prioritize liberty over leisure, serve and get involved, and inspire and teach others to do the same. Now, just a few resources. Okay. ProjectDefiant.com. ProjectDefiant.com. The mission for Project Defiant. Now, this is really for small business owners, but if you know a small business owner, send it to them. But the mission is to mobilize patriots and promote local businesses through community engagement. And I'm going to go through these pretty quickly. Another good resource for you, especially if you live in Congressional District 2. JamesonEllis.com/resources. JamesonEllis.com/resources. This is going to be good if you live in District 2 or even outside of District 2. Members.jamesonellis.com. Members.jamesonellis.com. And I also want to give my boy here a shout out. AmericanSerfShop.com. Serf is S-E-R-F. AmericanSerfShop.com. And if y'all are wondering, is there a biblical citizenship for modern America? Is there one going on here anytime soon? Where can I plug in? Yes. So starting on July 6th and every Thursday, I'm actually hosting one virtually over Zoom, okay? So I'm hosting one. Just shoot me a text if you want to write down this phone number. Shoot me a text to 936-220-5489. And I want to give you just another 30-45 seconds to just maybe share your heart one last time regarding the search.
Quick question.
Yes, sir.
You said AmericanSerf.com, is that
American Serf Shop.
Surf Shop? Is that S-E-R-F?
Yes, sir. Just share your heart about the American Surf Shop real quick.
Well, it's been on hold for a while doing this other case study thing. But originally, I wanted to, as a designer and a branding guy, use creativity to start conversations, and I'm doing it with clothing. So it's a streetwear company to where we design all kinds of products, but it gets people talking. So, for instance, just the logo shirt says American Surf Shop, and when I was wearing it, somebody always come up and go, "You spelled surf wrong." And I'm like, "No, do you know what a medieval surf is?" And it opens this conversation up. And so it was a fun way to teach this next generation about these, big waves of socialism and tyranny and all this stuff, doing it in a way that's entertaining, educational. Because you look around and the difference between a conservative thing and everybody in our field is liberal. I mean, you've seen it on television. And so how do we reach that next generation? By using creativity to do it. And so that's pretty much what the brand is about. Rebelling against tyrants in obedience to God right now. I'm in the church part of that and doing that, but then we have the government part and all this other stuff. So that's pretty much my take.
No, you're good.
Thanks, brother. You're welcome.
Thank you all for having me tonight.
I hope you all enjoyed it.